Join From Beer to the Bible every week as Ervin Lee and co-host Sarah Oliveira-McDonald warn others of the consequences of drug and alcohol addiction by being the voice of faith-based recovery. Every week, Ervin and Sarah help people get access to the treatment and counseling they so desperately need. They explore the depths of addiction and give practical life examples of how to recover and develop a new rhythm of living. The show is gritty, authentic, and simply raw while being rooted in the love, faith, and hope of God. Welcome to From Beer to the Bible.
Welcome to Beer to the Bible. Today, we have a guest host of I am Jerry Dale.
I'm Chris McMullen.
And we're in for Ervin and Sarah. Just want to say thank you both for allowing us to come in today and host the show for you.
We're just going to take you through some, conversations on, sex and shame. From both of our own personal testimonies and stuff, you'll hear, how God has led us out of a lot of darkness into victory. And so we're glad to be able to be here to share those testimonies with you today and what that looks like. One of the things that I'm really passionate about is helping those dealing with sex and porn addiction, because I myself dealt with it since I was 10 years old. And it was a dark time in my life for 25 years, from 10 years old when I got exposed to it the first time till 25 when God started setting me free. And during that time, there was just a lot of hiddenness and shame that dominated my entire life. It led to me to living a double life and experiencing a lot of brokenness. Nothing was ever enough. Anything I tried to do to make myself feel better was never enough. Whether I found it in porn or I tried to find it with people or what I did and stuff, it only seemed to deepen the despair that I was in my entire life. And throughout the years, as the pain increased, so did the use of pornography to medicate the pain. It just became a deeper and deeper hole for me to live in day to day, where I felt like there was no way out. So even though I grew up in the church and knew about it, when I knew porn or sexual sin was wrong, it did nothing to help me walk out of it. It only probably reinforced the shame, reinforced that there was no hope for me, and it kind of left me stuck for years, feeling that this would be my eternal plight, that I would always be living under this heaviness and this shame. So that was heavy, day in and day out. And so leading up till 25, I at the time was in seminary and was trying to learn about God while at the same time living a double life and having some panic attacks at times and stuff. Because of, all the sin and all the pressure I was putting on myself, because that duality, it talks about a double-minded man is unstable in his ways. In James, I lived that out. And the pressure in that time of my life was so intense. There were some moments I just didn't want to wake up because of the shame and pain I was in. And so through some events in the summer of 25, God really reached out to me. I felt by his spirit and confronted me with some truth. I had a vision of the wide and narrow way. And, it was this wide path where I could enter into all this sin and sexual perversion, or I could choose a narrow road. And as God presented that to me, I wrestled with that for a couple days, but ultimately chose to start walking the narrow road. Probably for the first time in my life in my own decision. But a part of it too was God offering his love to me. And I had told other people about God's love for years, but didn't recognize how much I never believed that for myself. And so it was probably the most humbling and shameful initially, but humbling time of my life, because God gently came to me and told me that you don't believe that for yourself. So at that moment, that brokenness that I'd prayed for, it came in a way that I never thought it would. And it really started a journey to even today to lead me out of darkness into light. But it was really in that moment of feeling like I had to have the right answer for God and how gentle God was by His Spirit, that like I decided that, I would leave that stuff behind. So I'm thankful to be here today, being able to help those that are struggling with some similar things and feeling the same heaviness and brokenness of their own life. And I'm glad to share the table today with Jerry, who's going to talk a little bit more about his story too.
Amen, man. Thank you. Thanks for sharing that. So my story's a little different. I grew up in the church, and then as I left high school, went to college, I ended up going to school at the Art Institute of Dallas, and I majored in music and video business. And essentially, I was in the music industry in the 90s, and I worked for Sony Music as a label rep. And as a label rep, I interacted with the artists as they came into my territory, right, into Dallas. And then from there, things just kind of, there's a natural progression, I guess, right? And I ended up going from the music industry into the adult entertainment industry. Now, when I was in the adult entertainment industry, I was more behind the scenes. So I was selling sexual, the sex side of it to people so that they could enjoy the sexual side of it, right?
Yeah.
So I was the guy, I did the Adult Entertainment Awards. I dealt with the people in that industry on a consistent basis. Knew several film stars and so forth. And so that was kind of where my story led me as far as that industry. And the addiction side of it for me was being addicted to what it was, the whole thing, the music industry, the adult industry, being into it, being able to make money at it, being able to continue with it, and not really seeing how it affected other people until the day came when I have daughters, and as they started to grow older, I think God just showed me like, how you gonna teach them to stay off the pole, but then you want to promote the pole, or you want to promote pornography, or you want to sell it. And so that's kind of where my life changed. And then in 2021, even though I grew up in the church, in 2021, God called me and I answered the call.
Amen.
Came back. So now I'm here today, and we're going to talk about it, and we're going to help you. We're going to show you how to get free from it. We're going to talk about that. And Chris, and he does this on a regular basis of counseling people and so forth. And then we're going to talk about my complete journey, and then how I put some things that may help you in my book, in my memoir, and we'll talk about that a little bit too. And then we'll just get it all out.
Amen. Okay. I like that.
Good.
I think one of the first things, we both kind of mentioned it in different ways, is the role of shame in our lives and stuff. So like we know maybe what we should do, but we deceive ourselves, or because of sin and because of bad choices, we just continue to kind of double down on our brokenness, and to where the lie comes in, and we'll talk more about lies later and stuff, but like the lies come in where you should know better. You grew up in the church, or there's no way back for you. And or even where you sin in small ways or big ways sexually, but like seeing God as the one that demands perfection from you, and that you can't make a mistake. And so like for a lot of, I know myself, is that if I started entertaining sexual thoughts, I already thought I was doomed. So like if I'm already going one way, and there's no hope for me, like I'm not going backwards, so right. And feeling stuck a lot of times in that lie, that like there is no path forward. I don't know about you though.
Yeah, and I think that happens with most people.
Yeah,
is they do that, and then you get caught into the feeling of it, right? And in any addiction, I would say you get caught into the feeling, but specifically in the pornography, you get caught into the feeling, and then once you grasp the feeling and it feels good to you, that's where you start to justify, and that's where you start to compromise it. And you're like, but it feels good, so I want to do it. But even though I know it's wrong, and essentially that feeling, I think, overtakes the logic of me not doing bad. And then now, before you know it, you're going down the hole. You're in it. You know what I'm saying? And then,
Yes.
and then now that the shame is there, you just stay in it because at least you're getting something out of it. Because before, I think the shame is so heavy on you that you don't want to do it because it's there. But then now the feeling lessens the shame.
Yes.
So at least mentally, right?
Yes.
And then you keep on going into it.
Yes.
And you keep doing it.
Yes. The shame is hard to then escape, but like you don't feel like there's any out for you. It's so like in the garden, God knows where Adam and Eve are. He knows where we were, but like we want to, in our nakedness and our brokenness, we just want to hide, because there is, at least for myself, I know, and I think Jerry could say the same thing, is that there is no hope, and so we just kind of double down,
Right.
In it and everything. We become kind of more lost in it, and so like we can't see clearly, anymore, like ourselves and how God sees us, or even like receiving mercy and grace, because all we see is like, I've heard a lot of people say in my counseling office, and I know for myself too, is that like there's a letter on us. For me it was like a P for pervert. Other people, have used a lot of language with me, like a scarlet letter, like people just can see it from them, and it's like this invisible quality, that they're
Right.
presenting to the world,
Right.
that like they just think that other people just have this insight to, and like that kind of doubles down the pain. So it's like, if people see me this way, the way I see myself, like I need to go into a place where, at least in my mind or in sexual behavior, is that they take that away. It's taken away and stuff. And so like our source of, we think of freedom, it actually becomes our source of greater despair, over time.
Yeah, and it keeps us locked in.
Yeah.
And that's why, because of the scarlet letter, because of the way it makes you feel, because of the shame that you know what it is, that's why you do it in a dark place, and that's why you do it in somewhere where nobody else can see you, or until you get to a level of whatever, and then you're out there just wilding out. So
Yeah.
and when you start doing that, then it's a whole nother thing then, right?
Yes.
But yeah, essentially, right, you try to do those things in dark places because they're not right, because they're not right within your soul anyway. And you really don't want them to ever get right, because again, when they do get right, then you go to the next level, and now you out here willy-nilly just doing things that are not going to help you even get back.
Oh yeah.
Get out of it.
Oh yeah. And I think the shame too, like, it becomes a black and white thing. Like, at least for me and stuff, I'll speak for myself and maybe some other clients I've worked with, is that like, it makes life about like a pass and fail. There's not a lot of growth. There's not, because of the pain being so like constant, apart from like how people see themselves or myself, is that we're perceiving the world as like, this place of pain. And so like every decision kind of like reinforces that, the scarlet letter or, the rejection in the world and stuff. And so like, there's no, again, I think that word I keep thinking about is there's no hope, it's inescapable. And so like, you just, kind of double down on the darkness or the isolation, where like God wants to like lead you, out of it by holding your hand. And a lot of people, and myself included, don't understand, I think, that part of that mercy and grace, that God walks you out of the shame, slowly, like holding your hand, it is a slow process, because you're learning how to grow in trust, and shame is about like isolation and taking care of yourself.
Right. Yeah. And you want to get, you want to be able to get out of isolation, right? Because Satan puts us in isolation, right? But when you're with God, you're in solitude, right? And those two things are different. Isolation is where Satan wants you, because he wants you to be by yourself, because with isolation, comes, let me try to do this on my own. Let me try to do this by myself. And that's how Satan wants you. But then when you get that grace of God and you get some of that mercy on you, and then you get in solitude with God, then it's a different thing because you're there with God. You're communicating with God. And so those two things are different, but the isolation is definitely where Satan wants you. But here's the thing. You can come out of shame. You can overcome the shame, right? And by the grace of God, you can come out of it. And I think that's kind of what you do with your practice, right? In terms of helping those overcome that shame so that you can get out of this and live a better life. If nothing else, for yourself, right? So that you can live better for yourself. So you come and you get some help, and you have somebody like Chris who will walk alongside you through the counseling and through the sessions and help you overcome that shame.
Oh yeah. I think a vital part too of like, apart from getting help, whether that be from like counselors or coaches, is, needing support. Like last couple of years, I've really seen the value, or more understood the value of like 12-step groups or church-related ones, like Celebrate Recovery or Regeneration or and different things. Because even apart from the steps, is the need for people, and like when you can confess your sins to one another, you are healed. And so I think a lot of times, like that part of support is understated, because like Jerry said, like solitude is a big part of it, like finding your time with God, but also then coming to brothers and sisters that can cover you with prayer or cover you with encouragement and support. And so it's not just about like going to a social step group or something like that and working the steps, but letting yourself be loved on by these people, and really being healed in some ways, a lot of ways. For a lot of people, like when they haven't had genuine connections and genuine vulnerability with others and stuff. And it's like, that's what they're starved for. And so like, I've worked with people where they go to 12-step groups, but they never connect to others, or maybe the group is not set up that way, where they've never really had a lot of vulnerability and stuff. And that can even exist in, church-like programs too and stuff and everything. Yeah.
And so for me, when it comes to that, that was always something that was hard for me to do, was to be able to be in a group setting, just because, one, working in the industry, but then because that industry within itself is such a seedy, dark industry, and it puts that shame on you, it's hard to find people that you can genuinely trust, right? And so to be vulnerable with people that you can't trust makes it hard, and it makes it harder to, I would think would make it harder to come out of the shame, because it's like, I'm already shameful, and the last thing I want to do is, I want to be vulnerable because I really want to get this off of me. I really want to get it out of me. I really want to overcome it, but I don't know if I can trust this person, because the last thing I want is for somebody to throw it back in my face down the road. Yes. And human nature and humans tend to do those kind of things. And so I think those groups are great. I think if you can find the right person, and find somebody who's healthy, and I think it's finding somebody who really has a relationship with God. And I say this, but hear my heart on this. There are people who will say they have a relationship with God, and they really don't. And I know that can burn someone when they get with someone who's not really right with God, and they've been vulnerable and they trust somebody. But you really have to try to find somebody. And so I don't know if you have to find some qualifying questions. I don't know what you have to do. You know what I'm saying? But you gotta have the right person though to be, for me to be vulnerable with somebody, it's gotta be somebody that that I can trust. Right. Yeah. And sometimes trust is earned. Yes. Right. But I can't even let you earn trust if I don't know how to do that, right? Yeah. What's really trustworthy, right? Just because we have some things that are similar or some things that are alike don't mean I can trust you, right? So
that's true. Jeremy makes a good point, is that like, whether 12-step like or church related groups, is, I guess when you live your whole life in shame, the harder part, even though for me, I did a lot of accountability groups or whatever and stuff, or church related groups, but like I was conscious all the time of, how did you react to me, or, like, are you going to lead with vulnerability, because if not, I'm not going to go there, I'm not going to, open myself up for the chance that like, you're going to look at me like, I have four horns on top of my head, or whatever,
Right.
Yeah. Or you kind of move on to like your golf game, and everything. So,
Right.
like, because you're uncomfortable with the vulnerability. And so, but I think that's a good point, is that like, I don't know how you look for that, even from a counselor, but like, I guess more if it's a feel of a person, and are they, can they sit with you? Like, I'm not saying it's a standard based on this, but like, you probably help me with the reference, but in the verse, but like, be quick to listen, slow to speak, and slow to become angry. And like, can the person that you're talking to, like, listen and really hear you out, because I think I've probably shared with a bunch of people over the years, especially in college, and when I was trying to walk out of some stuff, but like, they didn't know how to listen, they didn't know how to like discern,
Right.
like, and show some of that compassion. So I think, when in a day and age, everyone trying to offer advice, is that like, not thinking this out loud, is that like, can you find a good listener, that can like be with you?
Yeah. So I think to add to what Chris is saying, I think you have to be able to have someone that can listen to you, especially if you're looking for someone specific. For me, I would say like a counselor or a coach or something like that. If you're in a group setting, like if you're like with, AA group or a church group or like that, you need to listen, because you need to be able to listen to what they're saying, because now you're talking to just people in general. And when you're talking to them, hear what they're saying. Do they talk bad about a family member? Are they telling you something that's about somebody else's business? Or, saying, like, don't listen to be able to respond. Listen to what they're really saying, because people will tell you who they are if you just listen.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying? So I think it's on both ends, and it's just wherever you're at. If you're trying to go for someone specific, like a counselor, then you need to make sure they can listen to you and hear you, right? Because some of that mentally we're already thinking, and it may not be the same, but we're thinking like, doctor-client privilege, right? So it's kind of like counselor-client privilege. So I need someone who can listen to me. But when I'm out in the wild, right, and I'm just out here talking to whoever, I need to be able to listen to them, because what they're saying is going to let me know if I need to be able to tell, if I can tell them anything. Because if they don't, if they're talking bad about a friend, or they saying this or saying that, or, back in the day, or telling me some stories, or, some of the stuff that they did, and it's, and not that they did in sense of something I can't trust, but I'm just saying if they're telling something. So you just have to be able to listen to them too, I think. So I think it works both ways, depending on the situation that you're in, and what you're looking for and what you're needing at the time.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. Yeah, like paying attention to how people talk about others, and like, are they supporting, they hold space for others and stuff. I think that is important as well. That's a good note, that Jerry added, is to like look for those kind of people out there, or even like, within, if you're doing coaching or counseling, is like what's within that person that like you can go look for in the world. Is that like if they're modeling for you what it means to be a safe space. So even if it's a professional relationship, is that like, what is it that you like from that you can find in the world, to some degree.
Right.
Another thing that like we kind of talked about, or I mentioned it, and Jerry did too, or, a little bit, was about some of the thoughts that like people have that kind of prevent us from kind of breaking free, is or lies that kind of reinforce the shame, because they kind of builds upon it. It's a compounding effect. And so like, I know for sure, for one, is that like, for me and others, like, I'll never be free. I'm unacceptable. I'm not good enough. I'm different. Like I don't belong. I don't matter is a big one that I've heard from people. And like, with those lies become, this, at least in my mind, others, a like irrevocable truth, at least in our minds, that like this can't change. And that becomes the worldview that we live in every day without hope, and our experiences, from whatever time that we begin to live these lies and stuff, or these thoughts that begin to build, like really like run rampant and unchecked and stuff. And so we have all these situations in life, driving or going to work or interacting with your loved ones and stuff, that if we're not mindful of our thoughts, that can really lead us into like increasing the pain, sometimes inadvertently, to like where we only feel like the only place that we'll understand is that sexual behavior, So like, what I try to teach people is like, how aware are you of your thoughts? Because, they lead, to either life or death. But I think a lot of people, don't, I think, kind of wake up every day, without being aware of like what control they have over their thoughts, and they just feel like it's something that it just happens to them and they don't have any control over that. I think that's a big thing, is I feel out of control with my thoughts, whatever they may be, particularly around this area, is that, of sexual behaviors and stuff and sin, is that I don't know how to get a hold of that. This is what I've always thought and believed. And like, you're telling me it can be different. I'm like, I know at some point from hearing a pastor, whatever, or, parachurch, ministry, is that like, yeah, that's for everybody else. That's not for me, and everything.
Yeah. So, what Chris is saying here is huge, right? So there's, when you think about thoughts, genuinely, we will say as people, let's step away from just the porn addiction part, right?
Mm-hmm.
Generally, when we talk about thoughts, people will say, "Oh, Scripture says, as a man thinketh, so he is," right? And then you have people who will say, "Claim it and say it and claim it," or whatever they say, right? So those are things, affirmations. Those are things that are thoughts, right? That you want, and those thoughts typically, what you think will lead you to your environment, because how you think will attract the environment to you. And this is why it's so important what Chris is saying in this industry and with pornography, is because you start to think those thoughts that he just named, you start to attract the same type of people, and you start to attract the same type of environment. And now you're in that and you don't even understand, but now you start, what you're saying becomes real.
Yes.
Because now you're in it and you've gotten so deep in it, right? Because that's your environment now. You're only around people like that. You're only around, you're only watching those type of shows. I mean, you're only doing those type of things.
Yeah.
And so now you're in it deep. And that does make it harder to come out and overcome. And you need to be able to change. So you do need to be able to change your thoughts. I think it was, y'all got to forgive me. I want to say it's Emerson, and it might not be, but he says one of the hardest things to do is think. Right? And I'm paraphrasing because I don't know the exact word, but I'm paraphrasing, right? But it's like one of the hardest things to do is, or thinking is one of the hardest things to do. So that's why so few do it, right? Something similar, something like that, right? And so when you think about what you were saying, yeah, you wake up in the morning, sometimes you're not actually intentionally thinking. You're just going about your day with the routine, and you may start thinking about work or thinking about other things, or thinking about the pornography thoughts, or thinking about whatever. But I think what Chris is trying to get you to see, and you correct me if I'm wrong, is there should be some intentionality in your thoughts,
yes,
so that you can try to get out of and overcome those bad thoughts or those dark thoughts.
Yes, yeah. And that can come in small ways, just to like, they do in 12 step, or there were songs when I was growing up in the church, like, this is the day the Lord has made, I'll be rejoicing, be glad in it. But like, in 12 step, they do gratitudes, but like, I think it goes back to like the growth mindset that shame kind of takes away, is that, or I think everything in this instant culture is that like, we want the answer now. And like, it's hard to wait in the process of being changed and transformed. through the
Yes.
pain. Pain didn't have to look like, a surgery or whatever, but just emotional pain, because often I know myself and others is that those emotional pains hit, and like whatever effort we're trying to put into change and think differently, like that effort is gone, and because we want the pain to go away now.
Right.
So like,
Yes.
but it is intentional every day to like be aware that you have control of your thoughts. What I try to encourage other people to do and myself is that like, by choosing or being aware of your thoughts every day, like you're choosing to be in control. You're choosing to take back what, away from the powerlessness of, of how maybe your thoughts have run your life. But like, being thankful for your family, being thankful for your job, being thankful for the people in your life, being thankful for, like you got food on the table, whatever it may be and stuff. Like it may be small, but it starts to change how you see and everything. But I think that like sometimes, I know Jerry and I were talking about a little while ago, sometimes it's the small things, like what are the small things you can start doing, over time that starts to lead to that freedom, that starts to lead to that change.
Yes.
And I think that goes back to what we talked about. That's why it's important to have a counselor, coach, trusted person in the church or friend, because as you go through it, you're going to relapse. Relapse is not just for people in addiction, that's for any change. And so like those thoughts don't go down without a fight, because all the past experiences of, life lived prior, keep coming back, keep reminding you of like, this is who you are, and the sin, Satan, lying to you and stuff and everything. And so like, that's why like having one of those people we just talked about is important to like help you course correct, because like we can't do it alone. We can't do it alone. And these thoughts can change over time, but like, with, let's say sin in general, not just the sexual stuff we started with, is like, it's easier just like, I want to feel good now. I don't want to sit in these bad thoughts that float into my mind, but like, what's interesting is that like thoughts only have power when you give power to them. And like, that was probably the most freeing thing I ever had, a couple years ago, was that, I'm not saying that the past experiences don't reinforce, those old thoughts, but like it led me to a life of death. And for all of us, that out there is like working hard at being transformed by the renewing of our minds, is that it doesn't take away the struggle of like the past experiences and pain, but like that only leads to more death. That only leads to more emotional, relational, spiritual death. And like, God promises, love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, gentleness, and self-control. Like, give me some more of that, because that sounds way more appealing than like the thoughts that lead to these other types of death.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, amen. Yeah. I don't even have anything to add to that, man. That was, okay. Yeah. I don't have anything to add to that.
Like one of the things too that, we were kind of talking about was like the hidden cost of these behaviors and everything. And we hit on a little bit, I'll talk about it from like a personal perspective. Part of the testimony is, and referencing maybe some people I've worked with in the past, is that the hidden cost of like this addictive behavior kind of suspends growth, which I've referenced a couple of times, but like it takes away, like when we start checking out from life, in different ways, escape out of like necessity, out of like parents that don't know how to connect with us, trauma, another word for like overt sin in our lives, happening, is that when it's chronic, or if it's intense enough, like sexual, emotional, verbal, physical abuse, is that God made a way to, the fear, fight, flight, or freeze response in times of intense distress. But like when it's chronic with no one to like make you feel safe and secure, that becomes the default. And so escape becomes the only option. And so like whatever that age is for, sometimes it's not just one event, sometimes it's several events, but like escape seems to be the only way to deal with life. And so escape may not look like what we're talking about initially, like addiction or sexual behavior. It can just be about fantasy, going somewhere else in your brain, like wishing you were an astronaut as a kid, wishing you were like in a loving family, that you hung out with Tommy or Susie at their house and they seemed to be nice. I want to be Tommy or Susie's brother, or sister. And because like we want safety, we want to feel like we belong and like someone wants to take care of us. And so like when we start to escape, as a way of coping, we start to create this world out of survival to like help us feel better. And so for some of us, I know myself too, is that like going back to these painful experiences is hard and stuff, but it's a needed part of healing with God and one another, because like, I never thought about escaping as a, 4 or 5 year old, a 10-year-old, through junior high and high school with rejection, that like it would delay maturing and growth. It would delay like relational skills, and I tell people everyone's different, everyone has a different school that in their family gives them, as far as like skills and life skills and stuff and everything. And so, but like when you start to escape, your ability to grow, you can't do two things at the same time, So like if you're escaping from pain or escaping from like perceived hurt, you can't be proactive about growing. It's not impossible, but it's difficult to do that and stuff. Mm-hmm. And so, like, so it can look like a lack of emotional skills, lack of relational skills, lack of mental clarity, and more so of like judging things rightly, being able to think healthy thoughts, because like escape is not thinking about how you can grow. It's thinking about how I can survive right now. But, those are just some things that like come off the top of my mind when I think about some of the hidden cost of some of these behaviors. What's your thoughts?
So my thought, Chris, really with hidden costs. Let me say, let me give you a story, right? About
I like
me,
stories.
About,
yes.
Well, I won't say a story, but let me tell you about me, right? With hidden costs. One of the things when I first started working in the industry, I was working for Luke, Two-Lie Crew, Luke. Some of y'all know, some of you kids may not. And so Luke was like being in the music industry and the porn industry at the same time. It's just the way he rolled, right? But I'll tell you, I was in my 20s. And seeing the things that I saw with the girls on stage, doing the things that they were doing, it's like soul damage is what I call it, because I didn't recognize it, because it was enjoyable, right, to watch it, but it was still kind of like, oh wow, because I was raised in a Christian home, and I just was different, right? But what happens is over time, it damaged my soul in the sense of how I started to deal with other females, right? I was married at the time, but then as I got a divorce from her, I started to treat her different. Mm-hmm. 2, I started treating women different, not bad, but I started to see them different, because now some of them things I saw them ladies do, if I see if my partner, or not say partner, I don't want words, but if my girl is doing some of those things, in my mind, in my soul, I automatically associate she may be like that.
Yes.
And if she's like that, I don't know. I mean, because I don't like that.
Yeah.
I like it, but I don't like it. I don't want that to be my girl, right?
Yeah.
So now I'm starting to treat her a little bit different, and not even really knowing it, but it's because inside me, my soul has been damaged because of what I saw and what I've been around and what I've been, that environment has now brought to me, right? And so those are just hidden costs that that I didn't even know was there until I got older, and until I found Christ. And then you start to see, oh, this is why I was that way. But because I was that way, this is why she was that way. Even though there may be some similarities in people, doesn't mean that she's the exact same as this person.
Yeah.
Right. Doesn't mean that she does everything that this person does. It just means that there are one or two or whatever similarities. And so that's one of the hidden costs, I think, that we don't see, is the damage it does to us over time, the little bitty damage it does over time and time and time and time as we're involved in that industry.
Yeah. That's a good word. Yeah. Like, the damage of like seeing people as commodities, not as like image bearers, made by God. And so like that definitely teaches and affects relationships and stuff, how you see, women or people out in everyday life and everything, is if they're for your viewing pleasure, you can't see them as, again, as a, someone that's been created by a loving God. They're just something, if it suits my fancy, to ingest, to sexualize, to lust after. And so, like I think I hear a lot of times, this kind of ties back to lies, is where, like all guys do it, or, I can't help it. Girls are everywhere wearing these kind of clothes and stuff. Like, they should know better. And all these thoughts, take away from, or it kind of reinforces the lie, or that it's their fault, or it's they're that commodity. Like, it reinforces that, versus like taking personal responsibility and like taking your thoughts captive, so that like you can have a transformation within you, because you can't control the outward side world, but you control, how you think. And so like that is for a lot of people, a shocking realization, and sometimes a grieving little bit of like how much they've entertained, the brokenness of what that world promises, and seeing how it doesn't just affect when they're in that secretiveness and the isolation of the sexual behavior, but also in everyday life and how they treated others.
Yeah. Yeah. Good stuff, man. This has been good. It's been great conversation that we've been able to have here. Unfortunately, we're about out of time. We just want to thank Ervin and Sarah and from Beer to the Bible, for allowing us to come in and have this conversation. And we really hope that something we said here helps someone. And if someone needs help, right? Chris has a counseling practice. I coach a little bit more faith-based coach. And let me just say that I'm also an author, and so this is my memoir. And so I spent a decade in the music industry as a rep for Sony Music in the 90s, and I had huge artists we talk about in here. I spent a decade in the adult entertainment industry, which is the porn, and I'm currently in seminary as I'm studying for my Master of Divinity. And so hence the name of the book, Music, Porn, and Jesus. And so you can go to my website. It's imjerrydale.com. And you can see more content. We have a podcast show that I do, no sugarcoating. You're more than welcome to check it out and see kind of how we talk. But again, it's no sugarcoating. We go give it to you raw. We'll give it to you real, 100% of the time. And so as we begin, just want to say, Chris, you got any final thoughts to the listeners, the viewers, to the crowd that you want to give them?
I thank y'all for tuning in today and listening. I think more than anything to stress, that there is a way out. Where that comes from, like these different resources we talked about, or, more one-on-one through, individual counseling or coaching and stuff, is I would just encourage, overall just to reach out. that you don't have to be alone in this. You don't have to like struggle alone, because they're, when two or more gathered, is especially with the faith-based person, that believes in Jesus, we can walk with you faithfully through the pain. We can, help you navigate it. But like, when you're alone in it, you're only mirror looking back at yourself, and you don't might see clear, like having someone else that like can see a different perspective, through coaching, through Jerry or counseling, through me and others like me, is so important and stuff, because like that God wants you to be free. There is a way out, and we want to help you, you find that way, whether it's with us or someone else and stuff. We'd help you either way. Thank y'all.
Yeah. So thank you. And again, from Beer to Bible, I think it's beertothebible.com. And you will, thank you again, Ervin and Sarah. And I think that's a wrap.
Thank you for tuning in to this week's From Beer to the Bible. Make sure to tune in next week when Ervin and Sarah gift you with even more addiction recovery information. Make sure to like, share, and subscribe. You can find us on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And remember, we're always there for you.